If you can hear me.
Yes, sir, clearly.
It's our nature to care for ourselves. Why care for the trees? Because we care for our lungs, which need fresh oxygen. Why care for the birds? Because we crave for bird songs to wake us up each morning. Why care about the rivers or the oceans? Because we need fresh water and food for generations to come. Why care about the snow-capped mountains? Because we love a break in the midst of nature. Why care for the environment? Because it's our nature. This Environment Day, let's protect our nature and build a greener tomorrow.
Finally. Camping just like the old days, huh?
सही है यार.
So, how's work? Building a new India, huh?
Yeah, a sustainable housing project in Alwar. आजकल ये ग्रीन लिविंग की काफी डिमांड बढ़ गई है. तू बता, हाउस लाइफ इन वॉल स्ट्रीट?
Bro, मेरे लिए तो ग्रीन सिर्फ डॉलर्स है.
सुनना, बहुत भूख लगी है. चल ना कुछ बनाते हैं.
हाँ, चल बनाते हैं कुछ.
Oh, shikes.
Didn't bag the stove.
मजाक मत कर.
Now what यार? लगता है इस बार घास फूस से ही काम चलाना पड़ेगा.
एक आइडिया है.
क्या?
बारिश से बचने के लिए जो एक्स्ट्रा प्लास्टिक शीट लाया था, निकाल.
हाँ.
वो कंटेनर भी निकाल.
Okay. What? फिर से बिल्ड किया? हाँ?
अगर खाना है तो पास वाली स्ट्रीम से पानी लेके आ. जा.
Bro!
हाँ?
क्या?
Bro, ये क्या है?
ये पानी एक लेंस है. सनलाइट यहाँ से पास करेगी और इधर फोकस होगी. एंड दिस हीट विल बॉईल द वाटर.
अरे वाह, क्लीन एनर्जी.
यस, बट कुकिंग रोज तू करेगा.
इंजीनियर बाबू, you are a savior.
हाँ, नेचर इज ऑलवेज अ सेवियर.
Good evening, sir.
Evening.
We are waiting for another 10 minutes, sir. We'll start sharp at 5.
Okay, thank you.
So nice of you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Pleasure.
It's our nature to care for ourselves. Why care for the trees? Because we care for our lungs which need fresh oxygen. Why care for the birds? Because we crave for bird songs to wake us up each morning. Why care about the rivers or the oceans? Because we need fresh water and food for generations to come. Why care about the snow-capped mountains? Because we love a break in the midst of nature. Why care for the environment? Because it's our nature. This Environment Day, let's protect our nature and build a greener tomorrow.
Finally. Camping just like the old days, huh?
सही है यार.
So, how's work? Building a new India, huh?
Yeah, a sustainable housing project in Alwar. आजकल ये ग्रीन लिविंग की काफी डिमांड बढ़ गई है. तू बता, हाउस लाइफ इन वॉल स्ट्रीट?
Bro, मेरे लिए तो ग्रीन सिर्फ डॉलर्स है.
सुनना, बहुत भूख लगी है. चल ना कुछ बनाते हैं.
हाँ चल 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 बनाते हैं कुछ.
Oh, shikes.
Didn't back the stove.
मजाक मत कर.
Now what यार? लगता है इस बार घास फूस से ही काम चलाना पड़ेगा.
एक आइडिया है.
क्या?
बारिश से बचने के लिए जो एक्स्ट्रा प्लास्टिक शीट लाया था, निकाल.
हाँ.
वो कंटेनर भी निकाल.
Okay. What? फिर से बिल्ड किया? हाँ?
अगर खाना है तो पास वाली स्ट्रीम से पानी लेके आ. जा.
Bro.
हाँ.
क्या?
Bro, ये क्या है?
ये पानी एक लेंस है. सनलाइट यहाँ से पास करेगी और इधर फोकस होगी. एंड दिस हीट विल बॉईल द वाटर.
अरे वाह, क्लीन एनर्जी.
यस, बट कुकिंग रोज तू करेगा.
इंजीनियर बाबू, यू आर सेवियर.
हाँ, नेचर इज ऑलवेज अ सेवियर.
If you can hear me,
Yes, sir. You're audible.
and I'm audible.
Yeah, we can see you also, sir. And Mr. Shivkumar has also joined. We'll start exactly at 6. Good evening, sirs. Thank you, Mr. Shivkumar, for joining. We'll start exactly now so that we are on time. That is what CMA usually does. So we are joined here by Mr. Shivkumar. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We begin today's leadership lecture, the Tata Steel Tata Discon Leadership Lecture Series. As we are calling it, this is the 4th of this edition. Thanks, Mr. Shivkumar, for joining us for
My
this 4th
pleasure.
edition. Before we start the event, may I request the President of Calcutta Management Association and Chief Commercial Officer, Long Products of the Tata Steel, Mr. TVS Shinoy, to kindly introduce the speaker and also give the welcome remarks. Up to you, sir.
Thank you, Anirban. Doing a quick check if you can hear my voice coming through.
Loud and clear, sir.
Hello and good evening, Shiv. And it's a
Evening.
pleasure and really pleasure to have you on board with us on this series. And good evening, everyone who's tuned in here. As you all know, we do have the CMA does conduct the leadership series, and this in many ways represents the times we are in, leadership in turbulent times, and none other than Shiv to help us to take us through the session. We got about an hour of time with Shiv, and we will try to make best use of it. But before that, it's my pleasure to introduce Shivkumar, often known as Shiv, who is currently the Group Executive President at the Aditya Birla Group for Strategy and Business Development. He joined the ABG Group in Jan 2018, and prior to this, Shiv was Chairman and CEO for PepsiCo for 4 years, and before that, with Nokia CEO for India and later emerging markets for nearly a decade. He has been a CEO for almost half his career and one of the youngest CEOs in India. He's worked with HUL for a number of years in the area of marketing mostly. And he also worked with over 50 brands in his career and seen many, many business transformations. He writes on and teaches regularly on innovation, leadership, followership, business models, digitization across the leading business schools in India. A great sports buff. He's a fan of Manchester United and Barcelona football teams, John McEnroe and Roger Federer in tennis as well. He believes in giving back to the society and has been in the board of governors at AIMA between 2012 and 17, as well as being on the board of Godrej Consumer Products between 2009 and 17. He was the president of the AIMA, this All India Management Association, in 2012-13, and the chairman of the Mobile Marketing Association from 2014 to 2019, and chairman of the Advertising Standards Council of India for 2018-19. The awards, most well, we are sure that he's got plenty of awards. He's currently at the board of XLR and IIM Udaipur. He's been awarded many times as the best CEO, best brand builder. And the awards which are most dear to him are the ones he got from his alumni at IIT Madras, just Chennai, and IIM Calcutta. He's one of the 20 people in India who's got the most distinguished alumnus awards, both from IIT and IIM. Shiv is married to Hansini, who runs her own brand, innovation and semiotics consulting company. He's also the best-selling author of the book, The Right Choice. It's all about the career dilemmas and also the art of management. Shiv, welcome to the session here. We have got about an hour with you and maybe 45 minutes of what you could spend with us on your thoughts on what does leadership in turbulent times mean. And of course, a little more of the book of The Right Choice or the art of management, whichever you feel comfortable. And over that, we'll have a few questions from the audience as we take across. Shiv, thank you for being with us again, and over to you.
My pleasure. Thank you, TVS. It's an absolute delight to do this for Calcutta Management Association, an association where I've come many times to speak. So can you put up my slides, please? Who's handling my slides?
Sir, just a minute.
Yeah.
Is it visible, sir? Sir, you
Yes.
please unmute yourself somehow.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So I was given this wonderful topic of turbulence and how does one handle turbulence and what does it mean to be a leader in turbulent times. So I've got about 14, 15 charts, which I'll talk to you about. I'll try and keep it as simple as possible. And then after that, you can ask me any question. Nothing is off the table. You can ask me anything from any situation. So I've taken, you can take many analogies when it comes to turbulence. I've taken the analogy of aircraft turbulence. Basically, because a number of you fly almost every week, I'm sure. You're flying all over the country or across the world. And I'm sure that each and every one of you has experienced turbulence as passengers. And I can relate to it because I'm a very nervous flyer. And I have my own ways of dealing with turbulence, etc. Next slide, please. So first is, what is turbulence? If you look at the aircraft analogy that I'm taking, it's a sudden violent shift in airflow. You can have fast winds and slow winds colliding, or you can have different levels of wind buffeting the aircraft. Whenever there's turbulence, the aircraft can drop or change altitude very suddenly or move around. And I'm sure as passengers, all of you feel very scared when that happens. When we fly through bad weather, when we see that there is storm, there is lightning, there are dark clouds, we are prepared for it. It's easier. The more dangerous one, both for pilots and passengers, and a worry is what we call clear air turbulence, where the air is absolutely clear and suddenly because of the jet speed and wind, suddenly you start buffeting. And the causes for this turbulence are wind, storms, jet stream, etc. So in a way, as a leader, when you think of turbulence as this is turbulence in the external environment. It is not turbulence in the cockpit. It's not turbulence in the aircraft. It's not turbulence in your engines. Your operations, everything is continuing properly, but the external environment has shifted dramatically. as a result of which your company, your business unit, or whatever you want to call it, your team, is suddenly buffeted and could lose attitude or go off gear. Okay, that's the simplest analogy that I can give you for you as a primer on this topic. Next slide, please. There are many steps to turbulence, and it's always important to think back whenever you experience turbulence. It's always important for you to think back. For example, whenever I travel, I always look at the weather pattern on CNN or BBC at least 48 before I travel. So I look at the patterns. I know where the dark clouds are, where it is, etc. So at least I'm mentally prepared. If the weather is absolutely clear, I'm very happy. So I have a very good sense of whether I can expect turbulence or not. Now, what does this mean when we look at corporations, when we look at leaders such as yourself, and what does it mean for you in terms of anticipating what is happening out there? Next slide, please. So the first thing that you need to ask yourself whenever your business or your unit or your team is going through turbulence is, were there early warning sensors out there? Were there people who are out there telling you the truth? Okay, who is telling you something different and insightful? For example, when Nokia went through turbulence, a lot of the people were telling the Nokia senior management that, hey, you know what, the Windows strategy is not working. But the board and the senior management team were unwilling to listen to it. So every time a business, every time a team goes through some challenge, you can be absolutely sure that somebody has been telling you about this for some time, that the market is shifting, our products are uncompetitive, our quality is not good, okay, we have disruption coming. People are telling it to you, and the people who tell you this the earliest are actually your customers. If you're in touch with your customers regularly, they'll tell you that. For example, I was in Chennai yesterday working the market for the textiles team, which is Linen Club, our brand. And all the outlets were saying, we don't know what's working, but linen as a category has been growing for the last 12, 15 months, is growing more than 200%. An universal view. So you get very, very early warning signals on the turbulence you can expect from your customers, from your ecosystem, and people in your company who are willing to tell you the truth. From an example or an analogy of the aircraft and the pilot, what happens is, this is how radar maps look in front of a pilot on his dashboard. The green is absolutely safe if he can go through easily. The yellow is a bit mixed. The red is the challenge. So the radar in front of him maps all the clouds, all the water points, where he can expect bumps, where he cannot expect bumps, etc. So pilots have a way of navigating and knowing what to avoid. And I think early sensing for a leader is good enough. I'm not saying that early sensing will remove all kinds of turbulence and all kinds of problems. No, but at least you're mentally prepared. You're mentally prepared. For example, somebody will tell you, you know what, we have a new competitor and he or she is going to come in by January. Then you can start planning 5-6 months in advance to say, hey, you know what can this competitor do? What's the worst that we can expect? You can maybe do a bit of a war game on that. Okay. So there are many, many ways that you can prepare for the future on turbulence if you just listen to the ecosystem, you listen to your customers, and you listen to people who are willing to tell you the truth in your organization. Next slide, please. The other thing is, whenever you look at, will my business face turbulence in the future? I think you need to have a process to map the road ahead. The weather behind you will not play out in the front. This is a very simple weather map for India. It tells you at what levels the jet stream is, whether they're bad clouds, good clouds, whatever it is. Okay. So in the organization, wherever you work, whether it's for your team or the company or your management team, you can call it trends, you can call it foresight, you can call it whatever you want. But having a system, having a process to say, what will happen in the next 1 year? What will happen in the next 2 years in this industry? What can new come in? What are the old things that we need to forget, etc., is always a good thing. So in this regard, try and read as much as possible about people who offer opinions on the future. I'm not saying that all the opinion that people offer on the future will be valid, but by reading a lot, you're able to get a very good sense. For example, if you're in the steel business, you're in the aluminum business, you're in the cement business, there are a lot of reports out there. There's a lot of tracking by investors and analysts. There are lots of global pundits who are giving you their view of what the future will be. We are going into the new year in about 40 days from now, 42 days. And I can assure you, starting December 1st, you'll have a number of people writing on what they think the business situation will be in 2023 and 2024. So just preparing yourself and saying, hey, you know what? We've traversed COVID 2021. We've seen through 2022. Now, is there an upswing in 2023? I predicted during the COVID that the first year of real growth will only be 2023 and not before that. And that's exactly what's played out. In 22, for instance, there are a number of months where we are comparing against a very weak, COVID month of the previous year. Okay, but 2023 will be a full out, all out comparison like for like. So the past weather is absolutely no indicator for any company of what the future will bring. And you must always try and ensure that you have a process, a disciplined process to collect it. A very simple thing for you as leaders is in every meeting, keep 15, 20 minutes aside and say, hey, you know what? What do you think is the worst that can happen to this industry in the next 2-3 years? Ask that question as a leader. Don't say what's the worst that can happen to us as a company. Ask the question, what's the worst that can happen to the industry? Then you'll get different points of view. Keep that in your mind and say, hey, you know what? Will some of this impact my company? And what do I need to do? Keeping this very simple like that and having a process always helps. Next slide, please. So when you go through turbulence, and using the aircraft example, I take the old aircraft model. The old aircraft model is a model where you have the pilot, you have the co-pilot, and the navigator. So this is, a US Air Force plane. That's why it has a navigator sitting here. You can see him with his, notebook and laptop open. Now, who are these people? Whenever a company goes through trouble or turbulence, there are 3 people who are absolutely crucial. I'm not saying the others are not important. Everybody is important, but 3 people who need to be absolutely in sync with each other. The pilot is who I call the CEO. He is the guy who's navigating the company. He is the guy who's navigating the plane. The co-pilot is what I call the CFO. He's the guy who knows the numbers. He knows what's going to happen, what could go wrong, what can go right. And the navigator is what I call the CHRO. What does a navigator do? He puts the plane on the right direction, true north, as an example. So values in turbulence, values in tough times get compromised. People get scared. People look like rabbits in front of headlights. And that's why the CHRO is a very important component for me. These 3 people have to work hand in hand, day in, day out, hour in, hour out, minute in, minute out, if they need to ensure that the company comes out of turbulence. So if you're a leader out there, remember, these 3 people are absolutely the core in ensuring that you understand what you need to do in your organization as you go through turbulence. Okay. So pilot as the CEO, co-pilot as the CFO, and the navigator as the CHRO. I'm not saying others are unimportant, but this core troika needs to work for you. Next slide, please. Next, your cabin crew, think of them as your management team. Your cabin crew is going out there. Any large flight will have 6 to 15 people cabin crew, which is what the typical size of a management team is. Your cabin crew is out there talking to all the people who are sitting out there. And I'll come back to say who are the people sitting out there. So use your cabin crew very effectively. So those 3 people who are sitting in the cockpit must ensure that whatever they're doing, they communicate that very clearly to the rest of the management team, so that the management team is on one single sheet of paper. You're all singing from the same song sheet. You're not singing different things. Because the worst thing in a turbulent environment, the worst thing in a crisis is for people to say different things. And a great example of what's happening right now in Twitter is exactly what I'm talking about. Mr. Musk is saying something. People who are leaving are saying something. Some people who are staying are saying something. Some people who stayed for 3 days but are leaving after 3 days are saying something else. It's all over the place. They are going through rapid turbulence. Okay, so it's very important that the troika, the CEO, the CHRO, and the CFO communicate very clearly what is our cash position. Okay, what's our revenue position? What's happening with people? Are we seeing attrition? Why are we seeing attrition? All those sensitive issues you must communicate very clearly in turbulent times with your management team. I'm sure a number of you have done that during COVID, but this is what I'd urge you to do. So your cabin crew is your management team, and please communicate with them non-stop. Next slide, please. Your passengers are your employees. And remember, you have been a passenger on an aircraft. I've been a passenger on an aircraft many times going through turbulence. The first thing when an aircraft goes through turbulence is the pilot and the co-pilot and the navigator, because they're sitting right in the cockpit, they can see the horizon, they can know what's happening. As passengers, we assume the worst. The first thing when the plane bumps is, oh my God, will this plane land? What's happening? If it continues for 4 or 5 minutes, we all start praying. That's exactly what happens. Exactly what passengers go through in a plane is what your employees go through in turbulence. The moment your company hits turbulence, the first question amongst the employees is, should I stay in the company? Should I bail out? Do you think we'll come through? What will change? Why will it change? They're all worried. So it's extremely important that through your management team, you are communicating nonstop, you are talking to people, etc. When I fly across the world, the pilots I find the best when it comes to turbulence are actually British Airways pilots. British Airways pilots always come on air and say, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go through turbulence for the next 10 minutes. Can't manage it. Don't worry. After that, we are fine. You know what? It gives me peace. I look at my watch and say, I'm prepared now for next 9 minutes. I need to hold on to my seat belt and my, armrest. At least the pilot has communicated. The worst thing is when pilots don't say anything. When you're going through turbulence and the plane is going all over the place and the pilot is actually quiet, then you actually imagine the worst. So it's extremely important for you as leaders to communicate every time there's turbulent atmosphere. I've tried to do that repeatedly when we are going through that in Nokia to say, hey, you know what? Next 6 months are going to be choppy. Till we get the new range of dual SIM phones, or till we get the new range of Windows phones, till we get a new product, it will be choppy, but we'll come through this. So people want a very clear definition of when are you entering the tunnel of turbulence, when are you exiting the tunnel of turbulence, so that they're mentally prepared. So please communicate. Like all of us as passengers on a plane which goes through turbulence, employees feel exactly the same way. Next slide, please. The first thing you need to do when you go through company turbulence is fasten your seatbelt. When I say fasten your seatbelt, like the pilot tells you, fasten your seatbelt, get tight, etc. Absolutely be tight on cost. Do not let any excess come through in your organization. So get very, very tight, because you don't know how bad it can turn out to be. Your assumptions of best scenario, realistic scenario, optimistic scenario, pessimistic scenario, whatever you want to call it. In every tough situation I have found in my career, that you always build your cost structure on the pessimistic scenario. What's the worst which can happen to you? Build your cost for that. Trim your waistline, trim your seat belt for that. Then you cannot go wrong. What happens in most turbulence is that people are very optimistic. Oh, we'll be fine after a quarter. You never are fine after a quarter. It takes time. So what happens is people say, okay, 1 quarter we will cut, but next quarter we are back to normal. Never work like that. Always keep your cost structure down to the most pessimistic you have in the turbulent period that you go through. Okay. Next slide, please. Once you fasten your seat belt, if you've been on flights with turbulence, the first thing a pilot does, and that's the picture out here, he slows down. The worst thing to do in turbulent atmosphere is to put the throttle full up and go straight into the turbulence or the storm. That is a disaster. Okay. When he slows down, he assesses everything around him to say, okay, I was flying at 800 kilometers an hour. Let me come down to 700. Let me get a better picture. Okay. Where is a window where I can move this plane? How can I avoid the clouds? Do I need to go down? Do I need to go up? How far left do I need to go? How do I need to tell the ATC? What do I need to tell him? Are there planes in the vicinity? So you have to be very, very clear that in every turbulent atmosphere, this is not like cricket where you can hit your way out of trouble. In a business, when you're going through turbulence, slow down first. Slow down, scan the environment, come with plan A, plan B, plan C, whatever you want to call it, along with your CFO and the CHRO and then start navigating. Never fly headlong into trouble. If you fly headlong into trouble, fully knowing it, then you as a leader are letting your people down. Next slide, please. Next, all of us know that when we go through turbulence, one of the first things the pilot does is say, fasten your seatbelt, ladies and gentlemen. The second thing he will say is, cabin crew, please take your seats, suspend all service. Now, what does this mean as an analogy for us in business? It means as an analogy that there are some things you should stop doing. It is not business as usual. This is business unusual. So you have to ask yourself, what are the things you need to stop doing immediately as you go through a turbulent period? Anything which is non-value adding to the consumer or the customer whom you serve, take it out. It's just not worth it. It involves cost. And in a turbulent atmosphere, people will say, what are you doing? Let me give you a very good example of this. COVID. When COVID happened, I cannot tell you, there are at least 50 companies in India which went and launched sanitizers. Now their main business is in trouble. Why the hell would you launch a sanitizer of all the things? Absolutely stupid thing to do. Focus on the core of the business. Business grows when the core grows. Business does not grow when the satellite outsiders or the adjacencies grow. No, the core of the business. So you must be absolutely sure that all the frills, all the bells and whistles just need to stop immediately. So fasten the seat belt, cut your cost structure to whatever you believe is the most pessimistic scenario. Next, absolutely remove the frills, focus on the core. So stop some services which you've been doing for a long time. Turbulent time is a very good time for you to reconsider this and block it. Next slide, please. Next, reset your flight path. The moment turbulence happens, you can be sure, whether it's employees, whether it's customers, your CFO will be the first person to tell you, hey, you know what? Our run rate has dropped. Our margins have dropped. We will not be in line for guidance either to the market or to our shareholders or whoever it is. So whatever that flight path is, whether it's a straight line, whether it's zigzag, where you're using up a lot more petrol, or whether it's round, whichever way it is, you need to reset the flight path and you need to communicate the reset flight path to all your stakeholders. If you're a listed company, communicate very clearly. You need to communicate with all your employees. You need to communicate with all your ecosystem. So whatever your new flight path is, broadcast it very simply, very nicely. For example, if an industry is going through challenge, then as an industry, you need to stand up and say, hey, you know what? This industry is going through challenge. This is when we think we'll come out of this in a challenging period. People will appreciate that. And that also gives you time for you to set in motion a set of plans in order to meet that new flight path. Next slide, please. And finally, at the end of about 20 minutes of this thing, whatever you're doing when you go through turbulence, remember, never forget your destination. So this destination I call, when you're running a company, is your true north or your values. You have a bunch of values, you have a destination you need to reach. Please ensure that in the organization, nobody is playing around or playing the fool with values, and do not take your eyes off your destination. So to give you an analogy, if you're flying out of Mumbai and your destination is London and you're going through a turbulent period, do not forget that finally you have to land in London. You have to deliver to your customers, whatever the issue is, etc. You have to know where you need to go all the time. You cannot, through in a turbulent period, say, hey, you know what? I'm done and dusted, let me go. There are times when the pilot says, okay, I'm going back to base. There are times when the pilot says, London weather is very bad, I'll go land in Stanton or Manchester or whatever it is. Those are rare and few and far between. 99% of the flights, 99% of the companies must keep in mind where they're headed and what they need to do in order to get there. So I would say in summary that the best example I can give all of you about turbulent atmosphere in an organization is taking the analogy of the flight. In the analogy of the flight captain has the advantage of radar and sensor to tell him where the dark clouds are, where there is clear path. If you talk to your customers regularly, they will tell you what the turbulent period ahead is. If you talk to people who are willing to tell you the truth as a leader, you will get to know about what should be happening and what is happening out there in the marketplace. Okay, that's very, very important. The core is to have a very clear process all the time to say, what is the future looking like? That can be called trend spotting, that may be called whatever you want. No? But please ensure that you have a process. A very simple way of doing that is in every management team, in every team meeting, for 15 minutes to ask, what's the worst thing that can happen to our industry? And what should we be doing about it? As you go through turbulent times as a company, the three key people who need to be involved day in and day out and sync the strategy and the execution and the views are the CEO, which is the pilot, the CFO, the co-pilot, and the CHRO, who is the navigator. In every crisis, people tend to cut corners. People do the wrong thing. They assume it's the good thing for the company. But doing good for the company and sacrificing the values of the company is not a smart move. A lot of people do this. Please watch out for it. And that's why the CHRO plays a very important role. Do not allow any shortcuts to happen. As you go through turbulence, your management team is your crew. You need to communicate with them so that they communicate with the passengers who are the employees. When we hit turbulence as aircraft passengers, we fear the worst. The same thing happens with employees. They're like rabbits in front of a headlight. They think, hey, should I stay on in this company or should I take a parachute and bail out? Should I open the door and jump out? And a lot of what's happening right now is exactly that, that you're seeing. As you go through turbulence, you need to reset your flight path. Resetting the flight path means rethinking your guidance on the top line, rethinking your guidance on the EBITDA, rethinking your guidance on the margin, rethinking your guidance on the headcount that you need. You need to look at all those numbers very, very carefully. And you need to communicate them at the earliest possible time to whoever, is your stakeholder. So that's the only way you can come through. And finally, whatever turbulence that you face, those are dark clouds, those are bumps. Never forget that you have a destination to reach, and the destination to reach has to be reached by practicing the values of the company that you are really espousing. So that's all I have to say, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time. We are at 5:30 now. More than happy to take any questions, any thoughts that you might have. Feel free to ask me anything.
Shiv, thank you. I don't know if you can hear me, Shiv.
Yes, I can hear you clearly, TVS.
Yeah. Shiv, thank you. I think that's a wonderful masterclass, and having been in the corporate world myself, and to all the listeners in here. And Shiv, there are many of entrepreneurs, corporate professionals, students who are connected, and I'm sure even professors who are also connected as well. It's been a short crash course, I would say, of how to live a life both in the entrepreneurs and corporate world. Thank you, Shiv.
My pleasure.
And we got plenty of questions coming in. I'll try to maybe connect the dots. And
Please.
I couldn't see a better analogy than a flight in turbulence is truly what we could relate it to. Perhaps I'll pick up, Shiv, the first point which you said, and I kind of noted 8 key directions as one kind of takes off when one carrier safely lands to what he feels is his true North Star. The first point, Shiv, you did mention was all about early warning sensors. And as a leader, you need to be cognizant of who's telling you the truth. Having been in the corporate world often, telling truth to power is not easy. And I'm trying to connect even to what Sam Manekshaw said when he had the guts to tell Indira Gandhi that, hey, it's not easy for India to go to war. And then I'm trying to connect the point with the book which you write of the right choice. There's the career dilemma. How you manage yourself, manage your team, manage your business. So you often see people in the corporate world who want to tell a bad message to the boss, to the leader, and not often everybody as a leader takes it well. We have seen plenty of bosses, right? So in your career, Shiv, what would you recommend when you have to tell truth to power and not easy to tell? For a leader, how do you listen? I think you give some directions, but also how would you build on that?
Yeah, I'll tell you what's worked for me, at least. That much I must tell you. Is I talk to a number of people. I always believe that feedback is the breakfast of champions. Okay, I talk to a number of people, junior managers. See, junior managers are the people who have the least, fear. Okay, they're told by all the bosses, don't talk to the boss like this, etc. But they blurt out because they have not politicized, or they're not political animals in a system. They have not been long enough to know what is the right thing to say or the wrong thing to say. So junior managers are very comfortable. You ask them questions in different ways, they will tell you. So whether it was Nokia, whether it was PepsiCo or even ABG, I talked to a number of people almost every week, every 2 weeks, and asked them the same set of silly questions. What's happening in the market? Where are we doing well? Where are we not doing well? You can easily get a pattern of people who tell you the truth and people who don't tell you the truth. Over a period of time, you're able to judge that very, very easily. That's what I found. Because, a very important point, TVS, that you make. Suppose I'm asking you a question. I'm interested in the answer. So I'll remember your answer. If you're lying to me, you will never not remember that answer. You'll give me a different answer next time. And because that answer matters to me, I know what the number is. I know what the comment that you have made. So I'll keep that stored and say, hey, you know what? He's saying something different now. Why is he saying something different? Okay, that's one. Now, communicating with bosses. The thing about bad news and communicating with the bosses, try and do it one-on-one, always. If you tell the boss the bad news in a room full of people, he or she will think that you're grandstanding. You're trying to pull him or her down. So do it one-on-one. That's one thing I found. But what I found even better is to actually make a short note, and a simple one-page note to say, this is what I'm picking. This is for your information. I'm happy to discuss it. Remember, when you send a note, it's the most non-threatening thing. Now it's for the boss to decide what he wants to do with it. Okay, these are two techniques that I have found always, which have at least helped me. Okay.
I think I can relate it extremely well, considering all the bosses I've seen in the past. But I think the point of telling a note and in person works well. When often they don't get threatened, I feel. So being played both roles. That's one other interesting question which has come about is, well, the analogy of the pilot, the co-pilot, navigator, cabin crew, passengers was just outstanding. He asked, what is the role of a control tower? Where is the control tower in this?
Very, very good question. Thank you for asking that. The control tower is a regulator. You have internal values, etc. in the company. Here's a lovely thing. The best working teams in the world are pilots with the ATC. The pilot never meets the ATC in his life. So when a pilot takes off from Bombay and he goes to London, that aircraft, first, the Bombay tower hands him over to Ahmedabad. Ahmedabad hands him over to Karachi. Karachi hands him over to Iran. Iran hands him over to Germany. Germany hands him over to Paris. Paris hands him over to London. These 6 people don't talk to each other. They never meet each other in their lives. The pilot never knows them. But if the ATC says, fly at 30,000 feet, there is bad weather in front of you, okay, above 30,000 feet, follow that. That's why you have few air accidents, because the ATC is so well regulated. Nobody ever violates the ATC. So similarly in your industry, whether it's your industry as a body or regulation in your industry as a body, ATC is that. Please ensure you follow the guidelines, whatever they are. If you follow the guidelines, as an industry, you will tend to do better. As a company, you will tend to do better.
Yeah. So Anurup, I think you got your answer. That was a question from him asking him. Another correlating question which comes about is, as a leader, you have led many companies and businesses during turbulent times. How do you actually build the team, and how do you make your team stronger in a turbulent situation as a leader?
Okay, there is no answer to that, guys. That much I can tell you. I've turned around many a team, whether it's a brand team, with a marketing team, with a company team, etc. Let me give the last example of the challenge, and that is in Nokia when I was running emerging markets in Dubai. All the leadership team was very different nationalities: South African, English, Finnish, etc. Because the company was going through trouble, etc., whatever you said, these people had their own links and they would want to believe or not believe what was being said. Okay. Every man and this person was out for himself. That became the company culture with the new management there. So nobody trusted anybody. If you challenge people to say, hey, why aren't your numbers happening? It was as if people felt that you are threatening them and that they want to lose their job. So normal corporate behavior just didn't go through. I tried my best. I used to travel like mad. My health went for a 6. But that was a classic example of a gross failure because the environment was so turbulent. Now, you can go through turbulence, but what management should never add to it is toxicity. And that's exactly what happened in Nokia. Management threw in toxicity. What happens, in terms of toxicity in a turbulence, you play one against the other. You play TVS against Shivkumar. You play CMA versus LMA. You play CMA versus... When that happens, then it's every man like the Wild West cowboys for himself or herself. So unity of purpose is a very, very important thing. And if you can keep the toxicity and the politics out, that company will succeed. There is immense toxicity going on in all the tech companies right now as they're downsizing. All the stuff you read, they're shedding 11,000 jobs, 10,000 jobs, 5,000 jobs, immense toxicity going on. It'll take a lot of time for them to come out of that. So even though my intent was very, very noble and very, very honest and good in Nokia, my team did not see it.
Shiv, can you hear me? I think I've lost your voice.
To align to people who they thought will remain in the future, but nobody remained in the future because the company culture became toxic.
Shiv, on the piece of toxicity, and is a very interesting phenomena which plays out as equivalent of corporate politics. I think that's that. However, it says you have two people in the company, third one comes in here. So you did mention about enough communication and the example of the British Airways pilot. So one of the thoughts was different leaders have different leadership styles of communication, and binding the team together, having informal meals, a pat over the back versus was actually having off-site locations. So what you felt or your style of actually having communication styles with your team, especially when you went through good times and bad?
Yeah, so I'm a serious user of everything which is technology. I'm in touch with groups on WhatsApp. I'm in touch with groups on email. I send a weekly learning note every week, right from the time I've been a CEO, all the 20 odd years. Okay. Every week I send a learning note out to people. Okay. Every week. For example, the learning note for this week is about the tech layoffs and what we can learn from it. The learning note last week was the planet has reached 8 billion people. What are the challenges the planet has or companies have in feeding 8 billion people? Okay. So every week I research one topic so that I can prepare the organization and make them think differently. Okay. So that they can also now have their own point of view. So communicate relentlessly. If people reach out to you, reply back. I tend to reply to all the mails I get. I tend to reply to all the WhatsApp messages I get. For example, you'll be shocked to know TVS. I reply to every single Diwali message I've got. Every single one. Okay. Whoever it is, it doesn't matter. My customer, somebody who works down the value chain, a leader, another company leader. I say back, send back saying, Happy Diwali to you too. TVS, Happy Diwali to you, Harish, whatever it is. Okay. I think being responsive is becoming actually rare amongst leaders. The more technology we have, the less responsive leaders are turning out to be. And I would say, whatever the crisis you are in, whether good times or bad times, please ensure that you're non-stop responsive.
That's a good one. So in terms of, especially when you get inundated during the Diwali wishes and all this, is not easy to reply back. But I think you always remember that when a leader wished you on a birthday or called you back, it'll always be entrenched. And you feel like you're right.
Yeah. The reason I said that was my wife went to meet a company for her business day before yesterday. And the guy who was there, he had sent me a Diwali message and I replied back to him saying, all the best, take care of your family. And he said, he showed it to my wife and said, he's the only guy who did it. That's why I remember Shiv.
Yeah. And these small things are absolutely powerful. I can relate it so well, Shiv. And the CEO writes back and saying, well done for the small little job.
Yeah.
Or well done for a birthday.
Absolutely right.
I take a track back a little when you said preparing for the future. And often we as leaders we're so engrossed in our day-to-day work, and we are looking at quarterly targets or chasing the next quarter that we miss the wood for the trees. Often, while your message is quite clear, that spend 15 minutes pondering over the future for the leaders, how does the younger generation who don't necessarily have a chance to reach that level think big? How do you prepare them to think big?
Yeah. So one of the things young people, can do on their own is to ask, what is it that we're doing well? What is it that we don't do well here? And what can we change? And those are questions I always ask whenever I'm traveling. Like I was traveling, I was in the car with the salespeople, two of them, bright guys, outstanding guys in Chennai. I asked them, what do you think is going well? You had a fantastic October. What went well? Equally, what could we have done better? They said, some sizes we could have done better. This garments didn't come. This apparel didn't come. We lost business here, etc. So you constantly ask that question in terms of how can we do better? How can we improve? If you take success for granted, it's the worst thing. All success can be improved on. Okay, for example, today, we've sacked the selection committee of BCCI. Very good. But somebody has to do an analysis of why did India not progress? And I think Wasim Akram made this very important point I was reading. He said, ever since IPL started, India hasn't won an ICC tournament. That's a fact and a contradiction in itself. So we have to ask ourselves, okay, now my own analysis, having been there, I went for the 2 semi-finals and the final, and this is what I posted on LinkedIn. England had 9 batsmen and 7 bowlers. 9 batsmen, 7 bowlers. Okay, Adil Rashid, who's batting number 11 for them, has first-class hundreds. So given the context, Butler could bring anybody on or bat anywhere. And that means you're a multi-skilled organization. India, on the other hand, has 7 single-skilled people out of 11. In a T20 match, in a test match over 4 days, 5 days, most people come up. In a T20 match, you don't have time. All 7 will not be damn good on the same day. So that's why you need multi-skill. So that's the only way you can think of to say, analyze both good performance and bad performance. At the end of every meeting, I tend to ask a question, what have we learned? What could we have done better? Okay, where did we go wrong? Okay, and the more questions you ask like this, the more people will say, you know what? I think the boss is serious about knowing what's happening. So might as well tell. And some of the people will externalize and give excuses. You also need to recognize those guys. The guys who are, they'll say, okay, I've got the chance now. Let me, give the boss some gyan to justify why I didn't deliver my numbers. Okay. So that also happens. That's part of human nature.
Shiv, that's lovely again. And I remember Abdul Rashid was batting number 11. So they said that number 11 was actually could play that kind of skill.
Absolutely.
Shiv, that comes to a point that when you build experts and in a career, when you have a bigger, wide range to play, and when you go on the top, actually your field gets narrower. There's a thought which says, like companies adopt, and I could give an example of a 2 by 2 by 2 matrix. You need to have 2 functions, 2 departments, 2 locations in your career as you progress, so that you have multi-skills and multi-departments as you go across. And you did mention, and I may be taking a book from your right choice, where you said career dilemmas, and people who have a wider, young guys, when they enter the corporate world, can actually choose any company and function. But by the time you reach, and you don't know when the penny drops, that, you are left out of the skill sets which you perhaps needed to change. When does the penny actually drop, or when do you realize, or how do you build yourself for the future, especially maybe you are in the mid 40s or late 30s as they move along?
Yeah, a very good question. I think you need to ask yourself, is this skill or this industry taking me down a cul-de-sac? Okay, that's a very important question to ask. There are many industries which take you down one street and you can never get out. Okay, because other industries do not value the experience you have from that industry or that company. So you talked about specialization. My simple definition of specialization, which I read somewhere, or words to that effect. Specialization is you learn more and more about less and less. Okay, that is what specialization is. Now you really need to ask yourself, if you are a specialist person, then you need to be the very best in that. People must pay a huge premium for you on that. Let's take cricket as an analogy and T20 as an analogy. Okay. The number 1, 2, 3 batsmen in the world don't feature in the IPL. Marcus Leversham, Steve Smith, etc. Okay. You can be the very best, but in a multi-skilled world, people are saying, thank you, keep that skill, but we don't find that. People, who are the people who value? Somebody like a Dhoni or a Butler. Batsman, keeper, captain. Okay, 3 skills. Very important ones. Okay, so leadership is a given skill. So whatever you do, you need to be good at working with people, challenging them, holding them accountable, delivering results. So leadership as a base is something that every young person must develop. There is nothing called leadership in a closet. And it is not about the job you're doing. You should ask yourself, any job you do today, TVS, has three elements attached to it. It's got leadership attached to it. It's got sustainability attached to it. Okay. It's got digitization attached to it. All three. Okay. So any job you do, automatically you need to tell yourself, okay, I'm selling steel, but there is a digital business model for steel. There is an ecology element to steel, and there's a leadership to my job. So automatically you broaden your job to say, there are 4 things that I need to think about and learn. Okay, so every job has this, but most people don't recognize it.
Yeah, and sustainability in this day and age, I think
Absolutely, it's a given.
They say digital and sustainability are the new. I mean,
I give you an example, TVS, of sustainability. I was taking the flight, Air India flight last night from Chennai, 9:40. In the Chennai airport, there is carbon emissions and this thing board in terms for that flight. Can you believe it? Now, any flight you take, you log into a search engine, it will tell you what is the total carbon emission. That's the level you have reached to already.
And incidentally, companies, I know few of them, for every flight you take, you may need to plant 10 trees to offset the carbon.
Correct, yeah. Or you need to buy carbon credits or whatever you're doing.
Yeah. We're almost come to the end of it, but Debarshi Chaudhary asked, I can just connect it to the point when you said leadership, sustainability, and technology, maybe the third piece on stakeholders. He asked, often we as leaders, while we are very clear on what we do with the company, but what are we doing for the stakeholders? When you build your platforms of growth, you have plenty of stakeholders around you. Any particular thought on that line?
I think you need to take care of stakeholders in the right way. And only if you take care of stakeholders. It could be the government, it could be society, it could be industry body, it could be education institutions, whoever it is. Only if you take care of your stakeholders will you get the license to operate for the next year and the year after that. License to operate today works on that. For example, let me give you a simple one. In PepsiCo, we use a lot of water. I went to Nelmangla plant, and all the plant people and all the village around there said, what are you doing for us? So we identified 7 water bodies, and we did the 7 water bodies for them, etc. And we nominated employees from PepsiCo to be brand ambassadors of those water bodies in that village. And we actually put we went there, we saw it, we got the IAS officer, Mr. D.V. Prasad, to come and inaugurate it. Before that, no government official, no minister would ever talk to PepsiCo there. But the moment we did that, they said, okay, you guys are doing some good. We did that. When we went for that, the village panchayat told us, hey, Shiv, this has come out so nicely. Why don't you put 2-3 benches here? 2-3 wrought iron benches, so that we can sit here, because this has become a place for us to walk. 6 months later, when we went there, people said, hey, can you do something for our children for the school? While this is fine, one of the things we need our children to be, educated. So from protesting against PepsiCo using water, okay, when I joined, to finally saying, you know what, hey, you're doing something right, and thank you, now you have the license to operate here. So any industry you're in, and that was a red area, as you know, red, green, yellow areas, as you know. If it's a red area, you need to recharge twice the amount of water that you use. Okay, so you have to earn your license to operate in today's world.
Shiv, that was wonderful. And for all who are connected here, the recording is available on the site as well. And more importantly, I think I take back, Shiv, that never ever forget what your North Star is, whether it's a corporate world or whether you're a student, your North Star here. Shiv, would you like to leave some thought on your book, The Right Choice, and managing yourself, and you can connect with managing yourself during turbulent times?
Absolutely. As you know, when we joined a corporation 30-40 years ago, okay, we abdicated our responsibility of our career and learning to the company. Today, in a fast changing world, the average life of a CEO is 4 years. The average life of a company in 1960 was 60 years. Today, it is less than 20 years. So your boss cannot manage your career and your learning. Your HR department cannot manage your career and learning. Your company cannot do this. You have to do it yourself. You are the sole person You are solely responsible for your future. If your future goes well, good luck. You've done a good job. Don't expect anybody to give you a pass. I said this yesterday also at the Madras Management Association. I say this today. Every leader needs to think of, what I call the word real. R stands for relevance. Are you relevant? One of the things I always ask myself is, am I relevant for tomorrow? Will the 24-year-old respect me tomorrow to say, hey, you know what? Shiv is relevant. He's talking digitization. He's talking ecology. He knows the business models of the future. Once you're relevant, are you excellent at it? E is for excellence. You have to be excellent at whatever you do as a leader. Whatever it is, doesn't matter, whatever you choose. A is authentic. Authentic means being true to yourself. Authentic does not mean being nice. For a number of years, we thought that leaders need to be nice. If you don't give honest feedback to people, people will say, this guy is wishy-washy. He will, say whatever he wants, etc. Be authentic. Whatever is your true self. And L, which is the most difficult one, you need luck. Going back to cricket, imagine what a stroke of luck Pakistan got when Netherlands beat South Africa, right? You need luck in life. If they had come back without going into the semi-finals, the commentary on them would have been different. But because they went to the finals, they lost to England. That's okay. That was just sheer luck. Okay. So leaders also need luck. So be relevant, be excellent at that relevance, be authentic at whatever you do, and just hope that you have the luck. The more you prepare, the more luckier you get. That's all I can say.
That's a wonderful note to end, Shiv. I think, and I think I take back the fact of being real. I think relevant, excellent, authentic, and lucky. And the people who get lucky are the ones who are really well prepared.
Absolutely.
And and as I say, the best speeches or the best prepared speeches are the ones which are the most impromptu, or the impromptu ones are the best prepared speeches. So it's the other way around. Shiv, thank you very much. I think we had lovely 1 hour with you, and I'm sure that everybody who's connected here and who will watch the recordings later would have taken away tons and tons of learning. And again, very grateful, Shiv. You made our day, and thank you again.
Thank you. All the best, TBS. Thank you, Tata. Thank you, CMA. All the best.
Thank you. With that, we close today's session. Thank you, everyone, for joining in, and have a great evening.
It's our nature to care for ourselves. Why care for the trees? Because we care for our lungs which need fresh oxygen. Why care for the birds? Because we crave for bird songs to wake us up each morning. Why care about the rivers or the oceans? Because we need fresh water and food for generations to come. Why care about the snow-capped mountains? Because we love a break in the midst of nature. Why care for the environment? Because it's our nature. This Environment Day, let's protect our nature and build a greener tomorrow.
Finally. Camping just like the old days, huh?
सही है यार.
So, how's work? Building a new India, huh?
Yeah, a sustainable housing project in Alwar. आजकल ये ग्रीन लिविंग की काफी डिमांड बढ़ गई है. तू बता, हाउस लाइफ इन वॉल स्ट्रीट?
Bro, मेरे लिए तो ग्रीन सिर्फ डॉलर्स है.
सुनना, बहुत भूख लगी है. चल ना कुछ बनाते हैं.
हाँ, चल बनाते हैं कुछ.
Oh, shikes.
Didn't back the stove.
मजाक मत कर.
Now what यार? लगता है इस बार घास फूस से ही काम चलाना पड़ेगा.
एक आइडिया है.
क्या?
बारिश से बचने के लिए जो एक्स्ट्रा प्लास्टिक शीट लाया था, निकाल.
हाँ.
वो कंटेनर भी निकाल.
Okay. What? फिर से बिल्ड क्या? हाँ?
अगर खाना है तो पास वाली स्ट्रीम से पानी लेके आ. जा.
Bro.
हाँ.
क्या?
Bro, ये क्या है?
ये पानी एक लेंस है. सनलाइट यहाँ से पास करेगी और इधर फोकस होगी. एंड दिस हीट विल बॉईल द वाटर.
अरे वाह, क्लीन एनर्जी.
यस, बट कुकिंग रोज तू करेगा.
इंजीनियर बाबू, you are a savior.
हाँ, नेचर इज ऑलवेज अ सेवियर.